Good morning, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing a video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know. And I want to talk about the effects of punishment on physical behavior in youth and adults, actually both. And speaking from my own personal experience, full disclosure, I do not recommend anything in this video. I'm not suggesting people take this as medical advice, obviously, and I have no, qualifications, so to speak, to be honest, but I do have personal experience, and I want to share that, some understanding and insight, I believe, into what affects physical behavior. And what I mean by physical behavior is, say, you want to cross your arms or legs, or you tap your foot or move your arms and legs, where you begin as a young person with total autonomy, usually. And this is observed in schools. Teachers and administrators will tell you younger children tend to be very physically active. They are shifting and moving and bouncing and running and jumping, and it is everything the teacher can do usually to get them to settle down long enough to learn a lesson, I think, from my memory anyway, which is a segue to the conversation of why children are forced into classrooms, why it is assumed that structured education at a facility is proper and required. And it's connected to also to the subject of taxation, where if children weren't sent to a centralized facility, they would be at the home, presumably, most of the time, and the parents would therefore not be, free to work and pay taxes. So there's two opportunities. It's a dual fork. It's a pronged opportunity, two-pronged opportunity, where the parents are free by sending the kids to school to continue to work and pay taxes, and the children can be indoctrinated into that same lifestyle in preparation for working and paying taxes as adults themselves. But I digress. That's just an aside. Understanding the reason why children are diagnosed with ADHD, for example, why they tend to be very rambunctious and physically active, the usual situation that arises is that they get punished. Okay, now let's be honest. Children will be kids. Kids will be kids, as they say, until the adults lose their patience, until the teacher decides enough is enough, or the principal or the security guard or whoever it is decides, okay, I've had enough of this physical activity, and I don't care to understand it or explain it or excuse it because it's beyond me. It's not my job to, create or cancel the school. However, I have, a job to do, and that requires the children to sit still. So this is where it starts. I'm talking about kids for now because it starts in school, and there may be some punishment, some threats, some discipline, some structure, and it is all just assumed to be proper and good because it controls their physical movement. So what happens specifically? A child gets out of their seat without good timing or permission. It's off schedule, whatever, and they are chastised, right? They are admonished or warned, and then they are punished, and then the child remembers the punishment, and they might be penalized somehow or sent to the principal's office. I'm pretty sure they still do that kind of thing. And what ends up happening, it's interesting. Most children will eventually sit still, at least, under threat. Okay, so here's the entry point to the subject of this video. When you punish somebody, you can have a powerful effect on their physical behavior, their reflex to do things that they had been doing without a second thought before. And the whole point is to give them a second thought about it, right? So you might not want to get out of your seat until I tell you to, right? Okay, well, never mind the reasons they're here in the first place, like we just talked about. But so they go through school, right? And a person who has been through all their classes, especially if they have a lot of energy, and they're called attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They used to be separate things. I think it's just all ADHD now. It's all I hear anymore. But maybe it's because they're not supposed to be in a classroom all day. I mean, this isn't a new idea, but that's also an aside. So you punish the kid. You punish the kid that you say, sit down, or you're going to the principal's office. And they do, eventually, most of them. So they sit still, and you'll notice something at this point. They stop smiling. Many of them do, and it's expected. Makes sense, right? You just got yelled at or sent to the principal's office. You're not going to be smiling about that usually. So you go through, third, fourth, fifth grade into middle school, and you learn very quickly that if you piss off the teachers, you get punished. If you piss off the principal, if you piss off the hall monitors or the security guards nowadays, I guess there's tons of cops and security guards on most school campuses. You could even end up in juvenile hall if you piss them off badly enough. And that really is what it comes down to. So say you end up in juvenile hall. Now I'm going to speak from my own personal experience. Due to circumstances beyond my control, when I was a freshman or sophomore in high school, I ended up going to juvenile hall. And I don't need to go into all the details. I have nothing to hide. It's just not particularly relevant to this video. I remember the effect it had on my behavior. I was in there for about a month, and I got out, and I was pissed. This is also an aside, but I was very angry because I felt like I was just getting a raw deal. Like I had no choice in the matter. What led up to it was I actually, okay, I'll tell you what happened. I was, living outdoors at the time as a freshman in high school because I had been thrown out of my house by my stepdad. And I'm not complaining. I'm saying this is an explanation for what happened. So in my ignorance of youth, I thought that it would be prudent to have a knife in my pocket for protection, just in case. I had no plans to use it. I had never actually used it. And in fact, I found it in my stepdad's, chest of drawers, and I had stolen it, whatever. I admit that. I'm old enough to admit that now. But I was still going to school and, staying with some friends and wherever in a camper I found. And I showed up at school, and then the cops showed up at school. They searched me and said, oh, well, since you have a knife, we were going to take you to CPS, but now we're going to take you to juvenile hall. That's a felony, having a knife on school campus. It was a switchblade, whatever. So they took me to juvenile hall, and while I was in there, I was, confused. I was confused and sad and scared. It wasn't until I actually got out that I realized that there was not going to be an apology. There was not going to be restitution, an explanation, a big welcome home, homecoming. I was angry. I was so angry about it. And, the way this ties into with the story is it had an effect on my physical behavior. This is kind of where it really started to sink in for me. And I'm going to continue to speak from personal experience and keep it short. So moving on through life, and maybe you're a person who's experienced this as well. Maybe you have been arrested as an adult. Many, many people have. And it's not always something you had control over. Sometimes it's just a he said, she said thing, and someone goes away. Turns out in this part of the world, in Northern California, I don't know about everywhere else, but if there is any call for domestic disturbance, they take someone away. That's what they do here. It is their policy. You may have done nothing. Maybe nobody did anything. The way they handle the situation is they take someone to jail. If you're going to call us, we're going to punish everybody, is the attitude. Or somebody. Somebody's going away. Because we're not coming back. And that's what they do. So you go to jail. Maybe you bail out. Maybe you don't. But my point here is it has an effect on your physical behavior. Okay, so what do I actually mean by it? What is physical behavior? So, like I said, crossing your arms, crossing your legs, moving your foot. Okay, so you've been in jail maybe now a few times. And maybe you deserved it. Maybe you didn't. But that's also beside the point. Consider that, after getting disciplined for all your life as an adult, the things that you used to do effortlessly, the wind in your sails, so to speak, can just completely disappear. It can be just taken away from you completely. You don't even move your foot anymore. You don't cross your arms anymore. It feels like it's the reflex disappears is what I'm saying. It's a very interesting phenomenon. To have the impulse, the thing that you remember as being, carefree and in ownership of your person, it disappears. You become, whether you want it or not, you become a soldier, property of somebody. And you don't want to do anything. You don't want to move. You can choose to move. It can be very decisive. You become decisive, actually. I'm speaking for myself. I have become very decisive, and I insist. I have impulse control, and I insist on being physically active. I still, I get around, I move around, I hike, I exercise. I'm very physically healthy. However, my foot doesn't tap anymore. It's a mixed blessing. It's a mixed blessing. Having that wind in your sails and just, not having to worry about impulses, that was valuable. It was nice to feel like, I had ownership of my body. I could cross my arms willy-nilly without worrying about, getting, busted upside my head for it. If you've been in jail, maybe you know what I'm talking about. Doesn't take much in there. Doesn't take much to lose that wind in your sails. Most people don't understand that. I'm hoping with this video, I can open some eyes and people can learn that punishing people probably requires an explanation for what happened. Why are you doing it in the first place? Why are kids needing to sit still for so long? Do you really understand the reason? Maybe it matters. Reach out with questions or comments to whitehotrobot@gmail.com. Thank you.